Anyways, good to see everyone.
Yeah.
What's the news? What are we going to be chatting about today? Because I have no ideas, to be honest. I can only tell you that Sheffield is we're actually setting up stuff with Sheffield so that Sheffield can test things. So we're going to have lots of DNA analysis done.
That's exciting.
Yes, we're going to actually find out things, which is great. And then John Haywood from Union Bioscience, I had a chat with him yesterday, and he offered to do 15 plots, sort of like 5 treatments, 3 replicates each. So he's doing like little plots, like this is 2 by 6 meters each. So nothing huge yet. But yeah, that's basically the update from this side. Hello, Doug. Good to see you.
Hello, how are we doing?
Very good, very good.
Good stuff. So I missed it. Well, I was kind of listening in last week, but I was busy doing something else, and I think Richard had quite a good session with you last week. So yes.
There you go. Now it's your turn. Go.
Yeah. Well, no, I've got nothing intelligent to say, so I'll just listen to the clever people.
I think I'm going to start saying that from now on, and I'll just basically sit in the corner and do nothing.
Yeah.
I think this is the safest bet, basically.
It's often the best way. Yeah.
That's it.
Can I ask some questions?
Yes.
On the back we were talking about last week about Daniel, you said you were using 70 kilos of Johnson Sue per hectare or something, was it?
Yes, 70 liters basically of any compost, that we had per hectare, yes.
Yeah.
So that was extracted.
So but you took the 70 liters was what you started off with, and then you extracted from that.
Yes, because we used the sprayer, so we couldn't use solid.
Yeah. So, and that was in an arable situation that had been chemically farmed until then, or was it sort of halfway through a transition, or what?
No, just actually, our first both things, that the spring barley that we did, and also the winter wheat that we're doing right now. Like literally, winter wheat got sprayed with glyphosate a few weeks before we sprayed with biology. So
right, okay, because my question is, how much would I need to use in our situation, which is basically grassland, and the only chemicals we really use to any extent are fertilizer. We don't use any other pesticides or fungicides or anything else.
Well, if you sort of time your biology so you don't sort of like go in the same moment, you could. I think you should be going. Should be sort of like going more than less. So I would say if you can have 70 liters, then go with 70 liters kind of thing. If you have that sort of compost, you should. Maybe you could sort of start asking about who is making compost. Maybe a few farmers could come together to start making compost themselves, because there are people in Scotland who are looking into doing that, I know. You've got Michael Barton and you've got Phil Swire who come here to this group, and probably if the 3 of you got together, you probably could get something done between the 3 of you.
Yeah.
And so what you basically in your situation, I'd say starting with like we do this the leaderboard, and you find that in homemade compost you do have protozoa and you do have some nematodes, but the protozoa is sort of like the first thing that you really want to put out, because basically that will give you some nutrient cycling, right? So it should give you a bit of a boost of growth. So, you don't have to sort of, go too complicated with the compost, but usually the green waste compost doesn't give you that sort of protozoa counts.
So the protozoa counts comes from more
of a homemade compost, basically, something that, we would produce, something that people have sent us samples, Johnson Sue bioreactors, hot compost, warm compost, they all have protozoa in it.
Right, yeah.
And the one thing that we also found was having some root extract added to the compost which basically stimulated the growth of bacteria, and then the flagellates, exploded based on that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and you don't need a lot. We used like 1,000 to 1 in water.
1,000 to 1 from root extracts. How do you get root extracts?
Beetroots, carrots, celeriac, anything that basically you've got like that,
Yeah.
mashed up, and 1 to 1 with sugar, and then basically it sits for a day or something, and then you sort of get the juice, and that's basically your thing.
Right.
When Adam comes back, you can ask him again next week. He's going to show you. But this is what we have, some early successes. So, I'm not going to vouch for it just yet, but it seems to be something that we've now tested it, I don't know, at least 5 times in different settings, and we saw an increase in flagellates. Because the root extract with the sugar, it's like Billington sugar, so it's like dark sugar. It's not like white refined stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we have to? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, sorry, Daniel, I interrupted you. So what do we have to do to the beetroot and the carrots and so on and so forth? Just mash it to a pulp, or?
Pretty much it, yeah. So it's just, I think Adam mentioned it already in one of the previous sessions, but if when he comes back next week, you can ask him again. But it seems to be an interesting solution. So it's Adam basically described it as a process one of those processes coming from Korean natural farming, where you take some plant material and sugar, right? But his logic for this was, and the idea came from the fact that our local farm shop basically tosses a lot of unused vegetables into the skip, and we just started picking that up and eating some of it actually. But because it's all fresh produce basically, right? So the rest basically, his idea was, okay, well, it's roots, so it's literally what would feed the bacteria, because it's the exudates from roots that feed the microbes, right? So the idea, the logic behind that was, let's try to mash that up. Let's try to do the Korean thing where you actually get the extract, the juice, the FPJ, whatever they call it, and then Tom started experimenting with it, and then Adam was experimenting, and we have seen some very reliable increases in flagellates, especially. So in a very short period of time. That's the idea. In a very short period of time. So and flagellates basically is something that obviously is not something off the shelf yet, anyway. Once I figure out how to produce en masse and insist them, then I can put it into a powder form and sell it to anybody, right? But that's like steps away, and you can do it yourself if you do that that root juice thing. Mm-hmm. So that should basically give you an increase in the flagellate counts in your compost then. So and if you extract that, I mean, we had the most recent experiment in the other room. The root juice basically, after I think it was a week, maybe 2 weeks maximum, I think it was about a week, gave us the highest flagellate counts of everything that we've seen, more than what we've seen in a brew, because brewing is another thing. Obviously, in 48 hours you can have a ton of flagellates, right? So if you have an extract, you brew that up, and in 48 hours you get a lot of flagellates. So that's another way to get flagellates quickly. But something more stable, because obviously a brew is not something that you can keep, is a compost that's fed with this thing. So I think if you wanted sort of something beside the fertilizer, trying to establish the protozoa, trying to establish the nematode for nutrient cycling, and observing basically what happens, against the control. And then you can potentially do plots where you scale down the amount of fertilizer. So don't go cold turkey on everything. Just simply sort of, get yourself a plot, mark it out, fly a drone over it. I'm sure you love these things, Judith. And and just basically sort of, you can sort of go, okay, I've added biology, I don't know, 3 times now, right? And if you don't send me a sample, send the sample to Michael or to Phil, because they're closer to you as well, just to have a quick look under the microscope. Do you have the numbers, kind of thing? And then basically, they're not certified to the lab stuff, but they're trained enough so they can do that for you quickly if you don't want to do it yourself.
And so that would help you do the transition. What else is there? Folk talk about humates or what was it, fluvic? I don't know.
Like fulvic acid.
Yeah.
I don't have enough experience with these things. There are products which are reliable. Again, Adam has got some ideas for that. But there's lots of, for me, there's lots of conflicting information, and I'm just not educated enough in these things to be able to advise you on that. So wait until Adam comes back. He may be able to give you a bit more light, shed more light on that. There's people who have success with it. There's people who don't. Right.
Yeah. So it's not a given. It's something that, we need to learn about.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got a bag of amino acids as well, to test out here, and there's all sorts of different stimulants, and these stimulants, they feed plants directly, and they also feed microbes, and it's just a matter basically of personal experimentation to be able to get that. There are some products in some companies that do more in terms of testing, and they're more reliable. Like I can definitely say that Union Bioscience, that John Haywood guy, he puts a lot of work into testing, and so I would say, if he's got a product somewhere, he's saying that it does something, he's probably tested it 100 times. So that's one of the people that I would sort of be more trusting in that sense. He's running probably close to 600 test plots this year. So
yeah.
Testing, and some more testing. That's what it is.
Daniel?
Yes.
How you doing?
What's up?
Right. I actually just had a question about if you've had any experience of using water-soluble calcium.
No.
With your compost.
Not yet. However, the only time so far that stuff like that has been used was Adam basically put together like a mix, and it had lots of shell stuff, like that basically, was mashed up and grounded, and that basically went into to his compost, and that's why we think that that's one of the reasons we think his compost had the higher fungal count of anything that we've seen so far.
See, I've been playing around with the water-soluble calcium because Chris Trump said that it does increase fungal numbers. So I've actually added it to our previous compost.
Oh yeah.
We're going to send you another sample.
Okay.
I just really want to know if you'd seen any results, or you knew anyone that saw any.
I mean, like I think he added some gypsum as well at some point. I can't remember. I've got a list somewhere. But the thing is that the theory behind that as well is fungi moderate calcium, and because they do, perhaps there is a thing about them taking it up as well. And so that's basically the theory behind feeding calcium to a pile to see if they grow, and it seems to have a response. If you look at, I would need to dig it up, but I think it's one of Dr. Ingham's publications where there's Phil. You can have a chat with him, Judith. But basically, there's an old publication where what they did is they put calcium, and I think it was like a crushed shell form in different sort of soils, and they just started seeping water through it. And one was completely devoid of anything, and another one had bacteria, and another one had fungi. And now, unsurprisingly, you had 0 loss of calcium from the soil with the fungi. And so if the fungi basically picks up calcium, that was where the theory about actually feeding calcium to fungi came from. It's like it's kind of like not nitrogen, but like the some of the other, like sulfur, some of the other substances for some of the other minerals for plants, like calcium is potentially one of the more important for fungi.
And would you then, because I know that when you've got calcium in a substrate compost or whatever, you need magnesium with it as well. Do you know anything about that? Because like Matt Powers is talking about a 7-to-1 ratio. I'm just interested in finding out.
I've not heard him talk about that. I've not heard him talk about that, and I don't have any knowledge or experience myself, so I can't comment. The only thing I can think of is that the ratio, I believe, comes from what you need to flocculate clays. And so if you have a proper ratio of calcium and magnesium in clay soils, then they go like that and you're happy. And if you don't have the right ratio, they go like that and you're unhappy. And so I believe this is where it comes from. But I've not heard anybody, talk about it in the compost terms.
Okay, cool. Thanks, man.
Good question.
I've got one other question.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. It was really, I was also considering adding liquid IMO to the compost as well. Well, actually, what we were going to do was inoculate our biochar with liquid IMO and then stick that in the compost, because we want to kind of try and keep the life in there as much as possible.
Who was telling me about?
What do you think about that?
Somebody was talking about using. No, it was Richard last week that was talking about using biochar with cows. Okay, that's different. The IMOs, indigenous microorganisms, right? So basically, taking them from the forest and trying to do that.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, yes, I guess, but it really is sort of, just having a collection of stuff. When you're basically making compost, you want to have making biology with compost. I just keep repeating that what you're doing is you're taking an inoculant of microbes and then you're trying to give them conditions to grow out in a material that's devoid of weed seeds and pathogens, because of the process. And so we're constantly looking how to sort of like increase the library, and then basically how to promote the stuff that we want to promote. So having some sort of a collection, yes, we've done that. We've been going out and doing that, not necessarily with rice. Rice doesn't grow here, so we could try with wheat, we could try with oats, for instance, if you want to do that. But in general, you could just sort of like go out and take pinches, just like Dr. Ingham tells. And just basically take pinches of stuff, here and there, just basically collect that and just bring it in and just stick it into your starting materials. And then just basically try to have different piles and just keep mixing and matching. And so like, you'll have piles maturing and you have different piles maturing in different ways. Take, some stuff from different piles and put it into your new pile, and you're going to sort of, kickstart your own community that way. So it's, there's no one way. It's just basically sort of, trying to get as many as possible. And we say that, I'm going to give you a caveat here. We say that, but we're only going to be able to really know once Sheffield sheds some light on the species levels, right? Even just the numbers of species. Because then we'll be able to say is like, okay, well, have we actually succeeded in that theoretical process, right?
Mhm.
But yeah,
So Sheffield, the ones who are doing the DNA testing.
for us, yes.
Right. Okay. Cool. Okay. I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
Yeah, me too. We're supposed to send them something today. Anyways,
Thank you.
so that's that. Phil, going to Phil now. I was mentioning you because you know, Judith is in Scotland, and you and Michael are talking as well. And you know, there could be some scope for at least the three of you to talk together about, you know, maybe doing some composting stuff so that everybody's got enough over there. And it's nice to see Diarmid today as well, because obviously Diarmid is up in Scotland and he's very busy composting all the time.
Yeah, we need to speak as well. I've been meaning to get in touch.
I bought a composting machine.
No.
Have you?
A compost turner, and I've also ordered a web camera as well to fix this one.
That's good.
One was cheaper than the other, I have to note.
Yeah.
Well, the turner.
But the turner was only £300. It's a knackered one, but I can make most things work.
Nice.
Oh,
Is there a brand to it?
Sorry?
Is there a brand to that turner? What did you...
Morovich, like a Polish word, but from an Austrian company.
All right, that's interesting. Judith, you said something as well.
I was asking him where on earth he found that.
Oh, it was one of those classic, you chat to one guy about one thing, and 3 guys later, you find out there's a boy on our doorstep who's been doing it for 10 years.
Right.
But he gave up, and I think he gave up for the reason that we're here discussing this, that if you don't understand and measure biology, you're kind of just randomly turning stuff and hoping for the best.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't find it overall as effective as he should have done, and gave up and parked this machine in the bushes.
Right. So luckily he then found you, and you said, I'm just going to relieve you of that.
Indeed. So I'm going to
see, the thing is, he says he's got a compost turner, but he's actually bought a fork.
Well,
I've got one of those.
It weighs
That's my favourite tool.
It weighs about 2.5 tons.
Does it?
So
well, you're a stronger man than me, Diarmid.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
How far away from working do you think it is?
Oh, not far. I mean, all the blades are worn on it. PTO shaft's a bit strange. The gearbox has been altered, but we've got Windrows sitting ready to turn just now. So next week we'll give it a go.
Nice.
What's in your Windrows?
We've got cattle dung. We've got a bit of henpen. It's all organic stuff, and we've got clippings from branches and leaves and things from the local arborists that are around about us and gardener guys.
Cool. Yeah, no, I've been meaning to get in touch. Sorry, we need to meet up and see what's going on, because we're 20 miles away.
Not even that. Yeah, something like that.
About that. Yeah.
And I was speaking to Glenn today about what is he doesn't call it carbon cells, but he calls it something about
Carbon code.
Yes, but it's about creating a wee group. And he said, "Oh, Scotland's got a few interested people." I mean, I want to go wherever Jill is, because our chatting looks magic.
Yeah.
And so we've got a wee group. In fact, you know, if you look at the breakdown here, 1, 2, 3, there's 4 of us here sitting. So yeah, we're interested, and we're Scots.
It seems that this chat basically just draws in all the Scots.
Why don't you move to Scotland, Daniel?
Don't tempt me.
We have whiskey.
Tempted.
Dermot,
Sorry,
where are you, Dermot?
Dundee.
Right, okay, yeah.
Nice one. No, it's interesting that, you know, a few years ago when I was first starting, I met Stephen Appleton very early on. Obviously, he's up in Scotland, you know, and I went up there and I met up with him, and he sort of like gathered a little sort of group of farmers then. And I'm not in touch with them at the moment, but he probably could reach out to them very easily. And yes, I think this group appeals to the extremes of the country. Yes, and and so there is quite a few people interested, obviously. And I think you're right, Diarmid, in saying about a lot of people in this country actually trying and then sort of stopping because of the complexity. And it unfortunately goes back to what Ben Raskin from the Soil Association told me once. Try to imagine a busy farmer getting his head around this, and this is basically what we see. And so it's a very complex subject, but we'll crack it.
Yes, yeah. The difference is the majority of farmers are farmers and have historically been farmers for generations. I've never had any intention of being a farmer. I'm a mechanical engineer, so my background isn't farming in any way. I don't even consider myself a farmer, but I've been playing at farming for the last 20 years, but I can do scientific stuff, and I like scientific stuff. So it gives me an opportunity to use the old grey cells before I roast them all with my whiskey habit.
Try not
long then.
No, yeah, about 20 minutes from now, actually.
Another round.
Yeah.
We should do basically like a quarterly one where we do it on a Friday night, basically, and just open it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not talk a lot of sense, but then sometimes talking complete nonsense is good fun.
There you go. This is going to be, we're going to have the non-recorded version then.
Yeah, okay, the late night version.
Exactly. On that note, how can we use distiller's mash in this context? I guess it's pretty devoid of life on this chart. Distiller's mash is basically high nitrogen material, Doug. So it's just your just the same thing as you would add any poop. It's just high nitrogen for you.
Yeah, we're trying to work out the most efficient way of utilizing it, because this is quite a new venture. So this is somebody who's moved into one of the farm buildings and is going to be producing a pot still American style whiskey, basically, to take on these Scots at their own game. And not wanting to be controversial at all, but the beautiful part is we're growing the grain that's going to go into the system, and then we're going to end up with the mash back out again, which I'm trying to work out the best thing to do. Obviously, composting it is good, but I would probably like to put it through a pig first.
And I would concur wholeheartedly, because there's obviously levels of like a good use of waste, right? And so obviously you can't reuse that because it's been spent, but at least around here, if I go to any beer maker, you're talking about whiskey, but it's very similar in the sense of the input, right? So if I go to any beer maker and ask for beer mash, I get the answer, it's already snapped up. So if you can make it into either a protein source for your animals, or you can actually pelletize it or do something that you can make a bit of a pound on it, do it first. Don't put it into compost. I think it's a waste.
Yeah, no, that was my thoughts on it. Yeah,
I can completely avoid it because I think it's just got a much better use if you feed it to animals.
Good.
Yes. And we'll see about that whiskey then.
Well, it's going to take, they've only just started, so it's going to take a year or two before we've got anything that you can taste, but we're producing, or they're producing gin as well, so that'll be the first thing we can actually get to taste.
See, I can tell you that I'm probably one of the dumbest businessmen in the country, if not in the world, because I've taken on probably the most difficult product that you can take on to actually develop, okay? Whilst I'm Polish, and basically I live in this country full of people drinking vodka, and I've not seen yet any potato producer having a little shack where they basically make vodka on site, basically, and have visitors coming through, So here's a business idea for you.
Yeah.
I have drunk the, what is it called? The English, I think it's called the English. It's a malt whiskey, I think. And my brother bought it as a kind of a joke. But in actual fact, it wasn't a joke. It was very sensible. I couldn't argue with it. We were all disappointed. It's not our normal stance.
A disappointed Scotsman that can't complain on the English.
Yes.
That reminds me of about 10 years ago, I went on rugby tour to Reims, the heart of the Champagne region in France. And I managed to get it sponsored by a local English sparkling wine producer. It was a bit of a piss take, excuse my language. Anyway, so when we played the game, it was down to me to present the captain of the opposing team a bottle of this English sparkling wine. And he took one look at me and said, "What do you expect me to do with this shit?" But then actually had to concede afterwards, and it was all right. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
First reaction is all right.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So yeah, it's like I've got the contractor who does all the contracting work for us. That's 1,000 acres of potatoes. Not just potatoes. He's got spring barley and other stuff, obviously. But this is a massive potato operation. And I should just basically approach him and say, I'm just going to set up shop on the side, basically there. I won't need any investment. It will be all cash based. Anyways, drunken jokes aside. Any more interesting questions when it comes to biology? Phil, how many piles have you going at the moment? Are you going to go for Windrows?
Yeah, we're just short of starter material at the moment, green material, and we've got silage and hay, but I'm hoping sort of towards middle of February we'll start getting some piles on the go. But there's nothing going at the moment. Well, I've got some that haven't worked, but I was going to try Adam's thing with essentially his IMO 3 philosophy
for the Nematode.
Yeah, that's what I was going to try, just to get that in the mushroom compost. So
you can do that. But when you say what's the limiting factor, because you're saying that you're limited by the greens, but you did say you've got hay and silage.
Nitrogen material. High nitrogen material is the limiting factor at the moment. But we should be getting some organic chicken manure on the farm shortly, so that should solve that issue.
That's potentially going to heat up quickly, so you'll have to manage it.
Yeah.
Do you have any grain stored anywhere?
Yeah, I tried putting some barley into the last one, but it didn't heat up as quick as I'd hoped. But I just wonder whether I didn't soak the barley for long enough. Sorry, it was oats, not barley, because it didn't really do much to it, I found. Is that strange?
How much did you add percentage-wise?
Or
buckets?
That's a good question. What would we? I think we would have been doing a 40 bucket pile, and it was maybe 1 bucket.
Okay, so 40 bucket pile and 1 bucket. That basically gives you like a 2% addition of high nitrogen.
Yeah, there was other, in theory, high nitrogen stuff in there, but that probably wasn't that high nitrogen either.
In theory, right?
Yeah.
So what did you put in?
We've got we've got 2 ducats on the farm. A ducat's a place where pigeons live in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of manure in that, but I think it's just that old. It's probably lost its efficacy. And we put some cattle manure in it as well. But again, that was well rotted. So I think again, efficacy.
No, neither one of those will be high nitrogen. You would have lost the high nitrogen by the time you started. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you have any tree surgeons in your area, or a hydro doing anything with trees?
Yeah, but trees, we've got plenty of woody material. So it was just the high nitrogen content we were struggling with. But
so in terms of if you still have some of these oats, you can bump the number of oats basically to 10%. So use 4 buckets of oats the next time.
Yeah.
Pile, because they're basically locked up. They're not doing anything, and you don't have to wet them. Just put them into the pile. All of the other material is wet. So at some point they're just going to start doing. It's best to crack them, but then it's going to go hot within a day, and it's going to stink like a pigsty, and you'll have to turn it. And don't worry about the stink if you turn it straight away. But you will be surprised by the smell. It's like a pigsty, like guaranteed that basically when it starts going, it's a very stinky smell. But you need to keep turning it, and basically then the smell goes away, and it just goes through your whole heating cycle. So you can do it. You can do it with grain.
Because what I was thinking as well, I'm collecting coffee grounds, so I was going to maybe use grain and coffee grounds for the next one.
Yes, do that too. We've got quite a few buckets here right now because we don't have enough hands to make more piles right now. So we've been collecting coffee grinds from the local farm shop, and we've got quite a few. So I'm not going to be sending that to you though.
That's fine. You can keep them.
Okay.
Cool. No, thanks for that, Daniel.
Yeah, so you can go with more grain, but just expect the smell. But it's not something that it's a killer, the smell, but it's something that's actually quite normal. It's just that it does require a lot of turning. What's
that, ammonium sulfide or something, or what's causing the smell, or is it just? Is it
putrescine? It's like that's
putrescine.
Actually,
yeah, it smells like vomit.
No, hold on 1 second. No, it literally is pigsty, so it must be what's in.
That'd be ammonium sulfide or something then, huh? Something with ammonia.
It must be something. It must be something with sulfur for sure, because that kind of smell is like coming from poop. But it's pungent. You do get it straight in your face. But it's something.
Obviously, after your first turn, it gets a little bit better for the second turn, and by the third turn, you're probably all right. Yeah,
and you don't need to. You have to be careful. So, with adding water, so you don't overwater it, because basically, it's just going to exacerbate this whole thing. But you can experiment with more grain that way, and you'll be able to do it. And we've done with cracked grain, we've done with whole grain. The only negative that we see obviously is that Scruffy loves it.
Okay.
And the only time Scruffy doesn't touch the grain is when we're using the grain that I failed to coat, because I coated it in clay, if you remember that story.
Yeah.
And it seems to be untouched. Scruffy doesn't want it. And
why is that?
Heats up the pile.
What's the difference?
When it starts with a clay shell, and then the clay shell sort of starts to get off of it, and you've got this cooked grain, but it still it's still not as interesting to Scruffy as naked grain.
So that's I suppose, what was his name? Masanobu Fukuoka? Is that him that he coated stuff in? One straw revolution, did he not?
Yes, he did. He coated it because he didn't want the birds to get to it.
Oh, was that his reason?
Yeah, and this was not his invention. Romans did it.
Okay.
So he just moved back in time.
Another quick question. Sorry, I was wanting to get some Johnson Sues started. When doing a Johnson Sue, do I need to have all the material ready to go in it in a one-up, or can I keep adding to it?
You can keep adding to it. I don't see a reason why not. I mean, the idea behind Johnson Sue is that so you don't have to. But Adam has been adding to his pile. His pile basically started off with one pile. Then he took another pile from that he was running in Scruffworks. He just took it home, added it on top, and then he was sort of feeding it with coffee that he didn't finish drinking. He just put pour on it, and other stuff. So the thing is that there's nothing wrong with feeding a pile, and although we don't build Johnson Sues these days, we go through hot composting, and then we experiment with stuff that we can add later to promote the growth of the microbes that we want, right? Like we were talking about the FPJs, to grow out flagellates. We would put in that IMO3 thing that you mentioned, nematode, as Adam told you, into the pile, and the nematodes would then populate the pile. So yeah, all kinds of feedings is fair game, I think.
Do you need a specific, obviously with Dr. Lane's system, you're sort of, I don't know, 60, 30, 10% woody green, high nitrogen. With the Johnson Su, do you need to follow a recipe?
If you listen to Dr. Johnson, he doesn't care what you put in it.
Yeah, but
the most recent presentation I've heard of him, he basically just says it these days that doesn't matter where, doesn't matter what starting materials, you get the same community of microbes. That's basically what he says these days. Okay. So you probably, you know, in his opinion, you can start with, you know, just with green materials, just with woody materials, just with something else, and just basically you're still going to end up with the same thing. So that's his opinion, and I would say this is something that you would need to test for yourself.
What do you think? Is that going to happen? You know, if you're using such different starting materials, are you really going to end up with the same community of microbes as if you start with something totally different?
I mean, time is a massive variable in all of this, so there is a potential for that. Obviously, I'm not privy to Dr. Johnson's data. If he's got a massive data bank that gives him that result, he's probably right somewhere. The one thing that, you know, that makes me think for myself and not necessarily just take that at face value is another thing, which is not connected necessarily. But, you know, if you have a source of information that basically, you know, says something, never take it basically as gospel, just always treat it as advice and do your own work, unless basically it's, you know, it's thoroughly tested and, you know, you just buy a ready-made product. But the other thing that he says, for instance, is that he doesn't see any living hyphy, he just sees spores. And so a lot of people, you know, have started asking us, you know, to count spores. But the thing is that, yeah, I can count spores, but we have had compost, Adams included, which is much older than 12 months, and it's got plenty of living hyphae in it. And yes, we see spores, but it's the fungi is still there. It's not gone away. It's not disappeared. And so in the same vein, you know, the idea of using anything and getting the same thing would need to get tested here, basically, within this little group.
I'm wanting to do Johnson Su bioreactor or one or two, and I'm trying to work out how many I should try and set up this year for next year.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what was behind my question about 70 kilos per hectare.
One Johnson Su bioreactor per 5 hectares.
Right. So that's the standard 6 foot tall thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Because it will go down to about a cubic meter. And I basically
it more or less halves in volume throughout the process. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it will go down to sort of like 800 to 1,000 liters, basically. Mm-hmm. And it, you know, it starts going down very quickly. So even, you know, after a few days, basically, you could even top it off, and you know, then you're going to have some more in those baskets, because you already have got some structure. So the thing with that is basically the 70 liters. It's kind of like, you know, over 5 or 6 applications. You know, it's about 5 hectares worth of material. That's basically how I sort of work towards that number. Yeah. So if you wanted to do several, you know, if you want to do 50 hectares with those figures, then you would need 10 of them, kind of thing. That's my thing, right? If you wanted to do,
and once you've done that 1 year, do you have to? You surely don't. Hopefully, you don't have to put as much on every year thereafter. Once you've kind of established a community, have you?
two things. I want to actually just add one more caveat to the previous one. If you're after, for instance, starting off with pumping flagellates into the soil, you don't need to use 70 liters of compost for a brew. Right?
Say that again. Just missed it.
If, for instance, the first thing that you want to start establishing in your soil is flagellates, which are the quickest to make, you don't need 70 liters per hectare of compost for brew. So you can be more efficient with those.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're creating oxygenated conditions in the water, and you're feeding the bacteria for the bacteria to start growing. And then the flagellates eat the bacteria, and in 48 hours, you've got a high population of flagellates that you can put into a sprayer and go out to the field. So you don't need to use a lot of compost. You're going to get away with a liter of compost, for instance, or 5 liters of compost for that brew, in a 1,000-liter tank, basically. So you can definitely multiply that very, very quickly using that brew. What Phil mentioned about, this thing about growing out nematodes in a mesophilic process, that's something that is very, 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 very time consuming, but it's something that grows out nematodes very, very, very quickly, and you get a high concentration of nematodes. So again, you've got this other thing that you can get out onto the field, effectively. But in terms of reapplying, the one thing I need more testing on, and I'm adamant to do it, is I strongly believe that we need to test out, and we need to, and I think this has merits, injecting these things into the soil. And then basically, you're obviously on a pasture, so you've got a constant cover. And in terms of arable, we would need to have a cover crop, because that's what would allow these microbes to basically survive and start growing, more populous in the following years. Now, in terms of reapplications, I still believe that we're going to end up doing compost tea sprays for the surface of the plants to protect them against disease. So you're still going to be making compost teas, but you won't be needing that much compost.
Yeah, that takes much less.
Mm-hmm. So basically, initial inoculation, and the challenge is basically for them to establish, so they have to establish, so you have to monitor it with a microscope, and then basically say, like, okay, after, my 6 applications, I finally got them established, and they're there, or maybe it was 1 application because it was such a good application and they got the exact niche that they wanted and they're there. So it's about basically just making sure that you check and it shows that they're established, kind of thing.
Right.
The thing, my challenge, I'm going to repeat myself. My challenge is that I want to have a service for farmers where we establish them in season 1. Now, for you guys, if you're doing your own experiments, you're the early adopters, you're trying yourself, don't think that you have to establish it in 1 year if you're making your own material, and just basically just keep on applying, for a few years, keep measuring the establishment, because I know that people have established over a number of years, and that's fine. It's me being the ambitious moron that basically wants to have it done in 1 season, right? Because that makes for a very good business. I go to a farmer, I say, you don't have to do anything else, we just do that and it's fixed. But if you're doing it yourself, forgive yourself for not doing it in one go, and just apply it several times over several years, and that way you'll cut down on the inputs over several years.
That's not being a moron. That's being a businessman. And also, you're not really selling to us. You're going to sell to the people that are not on this call, the many hundreds of farmers who in principle would understand what you're talking about, but really don't care. And they just want to buy your product if your product works. And the best way you can prove your product works is if it works in 1 year, like magic dust. And I wouldn't blame them. This is why I'm doing this. I go to a mechanic to fix my car. I stopped trying to fix my own car long ago. Yes, exactly that. Because he's going to do it in a day and I do it in 2 weeks. But actually, your point is still interesting because it's the feedback loop that's more important to me now. So what we're asking about is how do we make compost and how do we know that it's made? And the only way to do that is to measure it. And we can send samples to you, but actually I think I need a microscope and I need the basics, which means I think I need to come to you for some training.
Come over, we have biscuits, or I'll get some.
Do you have any whiskey?
You know what? If you come on a Friday before the Saturday training, it's quite possible that there will be some.
Sorry, is it 7 days?
No. The training is a day. The basic training is a day. It's just on Saturdays, basically. But if you
The drinking 7 days.
I'll drink for 6 and I'll turn up on the 7th.
Bring some gin with them as well.
So if basically I get all the Scots down here, and then we're going to do a field trip to Doug to test out his whiskey, we're going to have to be there for a week then.
Nice one. Nice one. But I am going to email you and say I need to arrange a date, because I think that the only way that I can know what's going on with my compost, to understand it, is to have that feedback loop, is to measure it. And I can't spend all the time constantly sending things to you to do it. I need to understand the basics, just enough to understand it.
Yeah, and this is exactly, you know, this training session is exactly for that reason, because basically, you know, you want to be proficient in doing counts for other people in one day. You have to put in a lot of time to do that, but you'll know what you're looking at, because you're going to be able to see everything here, because we've got all of the samples with everything. You know, we can just pull it out of a magic hat and they're there. So
right, grand,
cool. We'll figure that out as well, I'm sure.
Yeah,
sounds great. I'm having more and more fun. Doug is going. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
We're going to be finishing in a few minutes time anyway. But yeah, it's you know, it's exciting trying to figure this out. I mean, it's you would think that 4 decades is enough to get things sorted, but I guess not.
no. Every single day you're always trying to figure it out.
But the other thing is that there's going to be people who start early on in the process and others who just, you know, who just take longer to come to it. And I don't think anyone's right or wrong. You know, from my experience as a group facilitator and stuff, just because somebody doesn't join the wave now doesn't mean to say, it just means it's not right for them at the moment. They may have 101 other things going on in their lives, just can't cope with one more.
Yeah,
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Yeah.
I get this is my lesson from last year as well, because I said yes to many things basically, and then suddenly I couldn't do anything. So yeah, I completely understand that. Any more questions? Phil just unmuted.
Yeah, no questions actually.
Good.
thank you.
We can wrap
Thanks
up
very
then.
much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's grand.
Good to chat. Take
Super.
care.
See you guys next week.
Cheers.
Yep.
See you
Bye.
later.
Bye bye.